Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is me, your old pal Orpheus, with another edition of the Madness and Mayhem podcast. It's been a little bit since I've done an actual podcast thing. Before I did talk about some things like Division and I did stuff like that before, but that was in the world of Blade and Sorcery. Today we're not doing that. I'm sitting at my desk here in my recording studio, and today we're going to talk about something. This one's kind of weird. I had a surgery a little while ago, and I woke up. So we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes here. Whew, no, I'm serious. Anyway, so hey, how you doing? It's great to see you. I am so glad you're here, and welcome aboard, whether it's day or night. I don't care as long as you're here hanging out with me. And of course, this is one of those chances you get to put on the headphones, sit back. I will have some visuals. I mean, some cool. Look at that right there. Doesn't that look nice? The mist just kind of going. Keep that nice calm image in your mind, because you're going to need it in a little bit. So anyway, hope you're doing okay. And in a little while here, we're going to be doing I'm going to be going on a little bit of a summer vacation for a few months or a couple months. And I'm not going to be able to do much content at all. And so you might get some stuff here and there, but there will be a little bit of a gap. Don't worry, I've got a huge library of content that you probably haven't seen all of it. Go back and check all that out. I guarantee you're going to have a good time with some of that other stuff. Really crazy stories and stuff like that. So here we go. This was a topic that I was thinking about doing while I was playing Blade and Sorcery, as I do with a lot of my kind of weird stories. And I was also going to do it in the arena, which is, traditionally on my channel, if I have some sort of horrible pain story or something like that, I do it in the arena. I don't know why. I just call it the Arena of Pain. And, so you get stories about me doing foot surgery on myself and getting into car accidents, stuff like that. Okay, so... I was kind of thinking about doing it in that kind of setting. And I was thinking about it, and this is not something I want to sensationalize. I debated with myself for a little while on this, a couple hours back and forth, just throwing ideas at myself, and I decided that it would be better to cover it in a podcast than while I'm trying to hack and slash my way through a bunch of digital people. And there's a reason behind that, and it came down to one simple fact, and it is that the experience, it has changed me a bit. But like I said, we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. So to give you some background, 2 years ago, I had a appendix kind of blow up on me. I had actually chronic appendicitis for 20 years plus. It's a nasty condition where you're kind of just occasionally teetering right on the edge of having appendicitis, but it's not going to show up on scans necessarily unless it pushes further into it. And so instead of full appendicitis, you spend sometimes days or weeks with these debilitating side effects that come from having appendicitis, but it's not full. So you get abdominal pain, you get bloating, you get just a fever sometimes, you can't get out of bed, you feel weak, you can't eat. And so this was going on and off for years, as long as I've known Mrs. Orpheus and longer than that. Well, it turned out one day, 2 years ago, I was actually playing Bone Lab. I had just bought Bone Lab on my Quest headset, the VR headset, and I was playing, and I started to feel a little weird. I started to feel a little nauseous. I was playing the game, and I'm like, if you've played Bone Lab, or if you've seen someone playing it, it's a very open game. But it's like cartoony, but at the same time, it's got realistic physics and stuff like that. So it can be a little off-putting for people, and it's one of those games that has traditionally sort of made a certain percentage of people kind of sick, nauseous when they're playing it. And so at first I was like, oh, that's probably what it is. I'll get used to it in a couple minutes. But then a couple minutes go by and I'm feeling a little worse, and I'm like, okay, let me go into this little shooting gallery thing where you can punch things on the walls and get weapons and ammo and stuff. And I'm just kind of going there and bang, bang, bang. And I'm kind of starting to sweat a little bit, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, I don't feel very good. And then this pain starts creeping in on my right lower side. And this had happened to me before, right? And when it happened before, I always thought that it was like a kidney stone or something, because I've had kidney stones in my life, and boy, can I tell you, that is not a fun experience. I actually have a video on kidney stones that I had. Go, if you want, go look. Oh my gosh, that was in the arena of pain, to give you an example of one of the ones that I've told in there. But so I thought it was a kidney stone. It was in that same kind of area. So when that would happen in the past, I would go get, I have one of those percussion massagers. It's one of those Theragun kind of things. And so I would sit there and I would put that thing on my side, thinking, that if it was a kidney stone that was lodged in, the system there, I could just sit there and beat on it with that massage gun, and it would loosen it up. I mean, at least that's the theory. Look, if you can go on a roller coaster when you're trying to pass a kidney stone and it works. That's a thing, by the way. If you can do that, I'm thinking, the same logic applies if you just beat the hell out of yourself in just one area, right? Okay, so little did I know that was probably the stupidest thing I could have done over the years, because it could have ruptured the actual appendix at any point, and I totally wouldn't have known. I'd been like, oh, it just suddenly got worse. What do I do? Anyway. So I had this kind of pain going on, and I was like, well, it's probably that. Maybe I'm coming down with something. It was still the time of the whole pandemic thing, right? So I'm like, maybe I'm getting a little bit of COVID going on. Whatever. I'm starting to feel, like a little bit worse. I get a sip of water and I'm like, oh, I really don't feel good now. So I'm a trooper. I was checking out the game for the channel. I was going to see if I could start playing it for my Orpheus Plays stuff, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stick it out, and I keep playing a little bit, going to some custom maps and stuff. And, I'm just like, oh God, I cannot do this anymore. I thought the game was just like terrible, right? I thought it was just making me horribly sick. So I went back to the meta store and I returned it. I did a return process on it, got my money back. So I'm like, all right, well, Mrs. Orpheus, I'm going to go lay down for a little bit. I don't feel great. I'll just give me a little bit before dinner and we'll figure it out. Okay. So I go and lay down, and as it is, when you get appendicitis, if you've ever had it, it just kind of, it hits you. And when it hits you, you get this real clear notion in your head that it is time to go get help. I am a person who does not normally do that, all right? I'm not a person who's like, oh, let's go to the doctor. I'm not feeling great. I am the person that will cry in bed. I'm a big wuss when it comes to this. I'll cry in bed saying, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. Please, can I just stick it out here? Call the telemedicine. Let's use Blue Care Online or whatever, I'm the last person that wants to go to the hospital. There's a lot of reasons for it, and this is a new one. But anyway, so I was like, honey, we're going to the hospital. I've got this pain. It's getting worse. I'm starting to get a fever. I'm like sweating profusely, and it hurts. I am nauseous, like on the verge of throwing up the whole time. And so we get in the car, we go down to the emergency room, and they're like, oh, we'll check in. It sounds like it might be, a kidney stone maybe, but we'll run you through a little test here. We'll do a scan, a little ultrasound, and was it an ultrasound or an MRI or something? Whatever it was. They were like, okay, we'll do that, and just go over here. We'll set you up with a little bit of pain medicine, and you can just sit there, and we'll be back with you in a couple minutes. And so Mrs. Orpheus and I are sitting there, and the nurse walks over and she says, so a couple things. First of all, the scan turned back that you have appendicitis, and it's a little hot. It's leaking a little bit, but nothing to worry about. And I was like, I turned to my wife and I'm like, excuse me, it's nothing to worry about. It's leaking a little bit. That seems like it's something to be worried about. And she's like, yeah. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put you on an ambulance and send you to this huge city, this big city that's like 3 hours away. And I'm like, what? Says, well, we don't have any beds here in our hospital tonight, and that we would have put you on the life flight chopper. And I was like, for a second, I'm like, damn, right? She's like, we couldn't put you on the life flight chopper because we used that just a couple of minutes ago in order to send another guy with appendicitis up to another hospital that was closer. And I'm like, man, if I had just come to the hospital a little bit earlier, I would have been on that chopper, man. So anyway, they go, no, it'll be fine. we'll get you in the ambulance and everything. And they strapped me down. They put me in an ambulance. And what they didn't tell me was the appendix could, like, they were really worried about it rupturing. Like, really, really worried about it, because they had 3 EMTs in the ambulance with me, 1 driver and 2 guys back with me, constantly monitoring everything. One of them was really cool. He let me vape while I was back there for the trip, because I'm like, it's going to be 3 hours. I'm like, dudes, I vape. Is there any way that I can do that? And they're like, yeah, absolutely, dude. Which was one of those things, again, where you're like, man, this is really serious if they're letting me vape inside an ambulance, right? So it's like, am I dying? I don't know what's going on. So we get to the hospital, and I've told this story in another one, but we're going to go a little different with this one. So I get to that hospital in that big city. They take me in through the like ambulance entrance, and there's a metal detector and a security guard. The metal detector, I go through that, and obviously I'm on a gurney, right? So, it goes off, and the guy comes over with a wand, and he's like, woo, doing that thing to me. I'm like, guys, like, I'm in a hospital gown wearing socks and underwear. Do you think I've smuggled something into the hospital? They're like, well, we just got to make sure. And then the security guard friggin' frisked me. He actually, like, put hands on me and stuff. It's like, okay, bro, if you really need to check my crack or something, like, whatever, dude. So they put me into this hospital room, and they're like, yeah, we're going to set you all up with surgery. Now, Mrs. Orpheus couldn't come in the ambulance because I guess there wasn't room or liability, but it didn't seem like they cared about liability because I was vaping. And anyway, whatever. So she had to actually rent a car because our car wasn't good enough to get to this city at that point. And so she rented a car, and she was driving after us, but it took her several hours she had to go rest. It was an overnight thing. And she had to get set up with the rental car and then get set up with coming out to where the hospital was. And so she didn't actually get to the hospital until after the surgery. So anyway, I'm there. I'm in the hospital. They're starting to prep me. They're asking me questions. I'm sitting there in that pre-op area where the nurse who's going to take care of you afterwards is like filling out paperwork and talking to you and stuff like that. And she's, just going through family history, which I'm adopted, so that was easy. Like, what's your family history? None. So she's going through these things, and are you allergic to anything? Are you sensitive to anything? Is there anything we should know? And I'm like, no. And if you've watched my channel, you know that I've had a lot of like traumatic medical things happen in my life, whether it be traumatic brain injuries, car accidents, motorcycle accidents, back trouble, like all of it. I've had some horrible things go on. And during a lot of the ones where I had to have stitches, they would actually strap me down, and I have these. I'll get to this in a minute. We're going from the point where it's like, me telling a story to like me starting to really kind of it started to affect me. So we'll get to it. Anyway, so I get all set up for pre-op. I see my name on the board for the operating room, and it's got a patient number and all that. And so they check off a couple other people before me, and now it's my turn. I get wheeled in on a gurney into the operating room. I remember it being it looked like a pool, it was, or like the locker room in a pool, because it was like square tiles. They were probably 2.5, 3 inches on a side, and it was alternating white and blue tiles. And so that's what, like, it was tiles on the floor, the ceiling, not the ceiling, the walls. And there were like these, they looked like ovens in the walls. There were autoclaves and all sorts of, there was a table with a bunch of instruments and everything on it. But that was off to the side. I just kind of saw it out of the corner of my eye. You've seen this stuff on television. So when you get actually wheeled into it yourself, you're like, oh yeah, you're kind of just a little familiar with everything, right? So I get pushed over onto the table here, the operating table, and they were like, "Do you want to scoot over?" And I'm like, "No, dude, I'm apparently on the brink of death. You scoot my fat ass over." I'm not fat, but whatever. I'm like, "You scoot my ass over there, right?" I was, They had already given me a little bit of a sedative, like pain medication, like what was it, like 2.5 hours earlier, and it was still kind of going on, but it was wearing off because I was not calm. So they're like, okay, well, here we go, and I had an IV already hooked up, and I was like, wow, this table's really narrow. And I started rocking back and forth a little bit, and I see the doctor that was above me, above my forehead. He looks over and nods at a guy, and that's when the tape ended. All right, so you know what I'm saying? Like, that's when the like sedatives and the anesthesia kicked in. So everything went apparently fine with the surgery. My appendix, I guess, wasn't in the place where they expected it was going to be. So they had to spend a little extra time looking for it. And then it had ruptured a bit, so they had to spend some time getting out some of that material and making sure that nothing was going to get infected or anything like that, no sepsis. And so it was apparently a really successful surgery, and according to their records at least, that it was fine, and they didn't have to give me any blood transfusions or anything like that. And, you know, that's always a good thing. And so I woke up blowing into a thing where you clear your lungs. It's a ping pong ball inside of a little plastic thing. If you've ever been to a hospital, you've seen these things in someone's room, right? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, I was blowing into that when I regained, like, the tape started playing again, so like active consciousness. And the first thing I started asking was, have you called Mrs. Orpheus? Can you please call her? And they were like, yeah, you've been asking that for the last like 10 minutes before I, actually became fully conscious. Because in the post-op, you actually are awake for a while before they bring you back to your room. So they wait for you to kind of get to the point where they can talk to you and ask you questions and everything, but you are not there, okay? You are definitely not there when they do that stuff. And so they found it kind of humorous that, like, the first thought out of my head, and it wasn't like with my conscious mind, it was like with the core of my being, I was asking for Mrs. Orpheus the whole time. So a little sweet, right? So I wake up, Mrs. Orpheus comes in, and, long story short, we get back home. Well, since that day, I've been haunted, and it took me a while to figure out what was going on. I did a lot of research, consulted with an expert, and discovered that I started to have these nightmares, and I don't have nightmares, folks. And it's not because, I don't dream. No, it's because I'm literally on medication that keeps me from remembering anything that I dream about. It's because I have severe PTSD, and this is a medication that just it shuts the tape off at night. Like, you still dream, so you don't go nuts, right? But you don't have any memory of it at all. And I was having nightmares as that medication would run out at the end of the night. And because it's got a short half-life, right? You can't just stop the tape rolling on your normal brain for more than 6-8 hours at a time or whatever. So you take the medicine when you go to bed, and then you get your sleep time, and the medicine runs out by about 9 hours, 7.5 to 9 hours, depending upon your metabolism, right? Well, I started to get these nightmares as I'm waking up, kind of from the twilight sleep into waking up. I'm not a person that sets an alarm anymore, so I just kind of wake up naturally, and I started to notice these nightmares, but they weren't specific, right? It was like I was floating in a lot of them, and I felt sensations of pulling, right, and pushing, and I would be floating. It almost felt like floating in a pool, and I would hear voices, right? It was just and it would sometimes get a little clearer, and sometimes get a little quieter and harder to understand. And it started to go more and more, and I'd wake up anxious, and it's how am I waking up freaked out, right? If you've ever had a bad dream, a really bad one, and you wake up and you feel what the right, for a while after that, but it fades eventually, right? That feeling didn't fade, and it was I felt I felt unsafe when I woke up, which is really bizarre, right? It just felt like something was going on when I was sleeping, and I just didn't understand what it was. And there weren't really any visuals. It was like there was bright lights like that I would see, and like that was basically it. And like immediately some of you were like, well, you were getting abducted by aliens every night or fish. No, it wasn't aliens. Calm down. So the dream kept happening and kept happening, and it started to develop. It started to like change a little bit. And I would get these dreams where like I'd get flashes of like pictures, and a lot of my memory, because of my brain damage and my mental condition, I don't have really memories anymore. In a lot of parts of my life, I have pictures, not like literal pictures. I have like, if I think about something and it's one of the few memories I have from a certain chunk of my life, like a part of my childhood that I don't remember anything of, except for like one snapshot of like, you know, a TV with a countertop and some shag carpet, and this is green and that's orange, and you know, like that. That's it. I don't have like a working functional memory for a lot of things. And I started to get this image in my head, and it's stronger than a memory, but at the same time, it's from that same place as a memory. Like, okay, so when you watch a TV show or a movie, or like you flip through a comic book or something and you see an image, or you watch something, and then you go back later and you recall that in a memory, you go, oh, of course, that was like a movie or something, right? That was a TV show. But you can always tell when it's not, right? The image I started getting in my head was, this is where it gets tough. It started with bright lights over my head. And as you look down in the images, I look down towards like the further down in my field of vision, it was my stomach, and it was bloated out huge, like 3 times the size of what it was supposed to be. And sorry, give me 1 second. There were 3 big instruments. They're called trocars. They're these metal spikes that are used to guide a scope for doing arthroscopic surgery. In this case, it was called laparoscopic surgery. And then they use another one to inflate. Sorry. They use another one to inflate your belly, usually with CO2. And then they use the third one to manipulate your organs so that they can get the scope to where it needs to be and do the work. And I saw all 3 of those trocars sticking out of my belly. And what goes along, what solidified this with the expert that I talked to was that image came with, it's like, the only way I could describe it is like a soundtrack, except it's like putting on a picture and then playing a tape of the sounds that were going on when that picture it was taken. And I heard voices, and I heard a radio going, and I heard them talking to each other about what they were doing. And then part of why it's not really a soundtrack is because I felt, sorry, I felt tugging. I felt them moving the instruments inside my belly, and I felt pushing and tugging inside. And when that image came out, and when the whole thing flooded out, and like my brain like finally released that to me, it got worse. That haunted feeling, because now I knew what was going on. I knew And I started doing research on this. I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is not a thing, right? You hear these horror stories about people that wake up, but they're always like, oh, I woke up and then like I sat up and I started screaming and they had to put me back out and they noticed and oh, geez, there was none of that for this. It was just, it's like if you have an iPhone, or I guess they do it on Android phones now too, you have a live photo, right? That's what it was, except that the image didn't really move, but it was so clear. And the research I started doing, I started talking to this expert about it, and it's called intraoperative awareness, or anesthesia awareness. It happens to like 0.1, 0.2% of people that have surgery done. And of course it's going to happen to me, right? And what happens is something happens with your brain waves, or the anesthesia is not being monitored well enough, or they didn't get the dosing right. And when it's an emergency situation, it could be even worse because your anesthesiologist doesn't have the time to go over your medical records and history and know all your medications that you're taking and anything else that's a mitigating circumstance, things that you're normal, like if you were going in to get another surgery done that wasn't like urgent, your anesthesiologist would have a consultation with you, know all this stuff. And so of course it's got to happen to me, right? It is something that I've become so scared of getting into an accident now. I carry a card now in my wallet that discusses what is supposed to be done. There's a special way to monitor. It's supposed to be a brain monitor they're supposed to use in special circumstances. They're supposed to paralyze my body and do more effective dosing. And I carry this card in my wallet now that tells people what to do if they need to have me in surgery. But it's more than that. Now, if I have to have dental work done, now I have to rely... The tugging sensations, man. You know, when you go to the dentist, you get those tugging sensations, and just feeling my body getting manipulated like that, it was horrible. So now I carry this card, and it tells people what to do with these, like with the brain monitoring system and everything. It tells them to look for signs specifically because my eyes opened during the surgery. Even if it was for 10 seconds, a minute, whatever it was, because the average length can go up to a minute or two. But I don't know how long it was, but it was long enough for me to feel what was going on. It left me... I'm so scared now to even go get anything done. I'm getting older. I'm getting to the point where like medical care is going to start being a legitimate concern. Different surgeries for like knee and like, things like that. And I'm scared. I had to fill out a whole thing now. I went and got one of those medical ID bracelets with a QR code, and I put it on the locked phone on my screen that you can scan it. And I'm just terrified of it because, folks, if I can't express the abject like body horror, what that's caused. It has really, I've already got PTSD from childhood and young adulthood of just some terrible shit, man. And this is just, I was doing so good with anxiety and stuff, I was doing great. My dog passed last year, and a lot of the stress that I had was taking care of an older dog. When they get older and you don't feel right anymore because you have to start taking more care of them, and you get worried about every little cough and sniff. And so when she passed, it was almost like a freeing thing, right? The anxiety and everything went away. And then I started getting those dreams, and I didn't understand why it happened like a year and a half after. Like, I didn't really realize what it was until that much longer. And it is something that at some point traumatic events can release things. And it was a traumatic event, losing my dog. But ever since the surgery, I've had this feeling of unease. And ever since it kind of popped out of my consciousness, it's been horrible. But I'm going to talk to my therapist about it. I'm going to have to figure out what else I can do. There's not a stronger version of the medicine that I take for nightmares. I'm already at a max dose for that. It works pretty well, except lately. But yeah, so that's the story of that. Gosh, I didn't know I would get this emotional. I really apologize. If you're still with me, thanks. I really appreciate it. It helps me to talk about this stuff with you, whether you know it or not. You, anonymous person there listening, thank you. You're helping me a lot with things like this in my life. I am so stuffed up now. Anyway, sorry to bum you all out. Don't worry. Like I said, it's a really rare thing. Most of the time, you're not going to run into it. As a matter of fact, 99.9% of the time, you're not going to have a problem. So don't worry. It's not going to happen to you. But of course, like with me, it's another thing that happened to me that's just incredible and just, yeah, why me, right? Anyway, so thanks for listening. Boy, this is a rough one to wrap up. I'm so drained. Anyway, thanks for listening here on Orpheus Plays. I really appreciate you. Be good, do good, and treat yourself well, my friend, because you know what? You deserve it. And we'll talk to you in the next one. We'll see you next time here on Orpheus Plays. Bye.